Hey friends, it's Jill here with the Hometown Homestead, and we are back in the kitchen today making another fabulous recipe for Canuary. If you are interested in an amazing grape jelly but want to make it super simple and easy, this is going to be the recipe for you. Now last time I showed you a few extra toys with my awesome canner, but with today's recipe I wanted to show you something super easy that you can do even if you're a beginner, as long as you have 4 jars. Now, see what I did there? 4 jars? This bottle of juice is gonna make us 4 jars of jelly, and of course, Canuary being sponsored by 4 Jars, we're so excited for all the prizes and offerings that Sutton's Days in 4 Jars are putting together for us, and just can't thank everybody enough for coming along for this Canuary journey. From my house, I just want to say this has been overwhelming to listen to all your awesome comments, and I'm just welcome and grateful to have you in my kitchen. So without further ado, let's get started. Making a jelly with Pomonas Pectin is actually super easy, and there's awesome directions that come straight in every box. It comes with the ingredients that you need here, like calcium water, and tells you all the directions on how to do that. If you're looking to go a little more in depth, they make an amazing cookbook here, or should I say preserving book, that gives you all different recipes that you can use with Pomonas itself. Now, I love this book. The pictures are absolutely gorgeous, and it gives you a lot of really beautiful ideas. But for what we're gonna do today, I wanted to show you the simple and easy way to do this. So when you buy the package of Pomonas, it comes with this printout on both sides, and it actually gives you any recipe that you're gonna need if you're just wanting to make a regular jam or jelly. Now, for what I'm doing, I am using 100% juice. This is not from concentrate. But if you were using a concentrate, those directions are on the back as well. To get started here, I've got water going over on the stove with our jars in it. Each 32-ounce bottle of grape juice is gonna give me 4 to 5 cups of final product. So I did go ahead and put 10 jars in because we're gonna do a double batch and make sure we get enough for our kiddos on the shelf. You can do this in pints. One caution there is that the product itself is only good for about 3 weeks after it's opened in the refrigerator per the instructions. So I don't like to go with a very big jar because I want to make sure we're not wasting what we're putting away. To get started, the first step in the directions say to make your calcium water. Now I have calcium water left over from the last time I used our Pomonas, so I'm not going to mix up this new batch. To make the calcium water, you put a half teaspoon of this packet and a half cup of water, and so you just put this back in your refrigerator and you'll have it when you're ready to go again next time. The first step to making the jelly is always to wash and rinse your jars and let them sit in your hot water over on the stove. I am just using a big stock pot for my canner itself. I picked this recipe because I wanted to show you that you probably already have all the ingredients you need to can, even if you're a new canner, as long as you pick a simple recipe and go with a water bath product. So that's what we're doing here. I have my jars over on the stove getting warm. You also want to make sure you have the bands and rings that you need set aside. Prepare your calcium water, which I showed you earlier, and then you want to prepare your juice. I decided to go with grape because it's super easy to get a hold of, and my kids love grape jelly. But if you're using blackberries, raspberries, or anything else that you've picked yourself, you'll go through the steps listed on the insert to mash your fruit and extract the juice. Since ours is already ready to go, we can skip that step and go straight to it. So into the pot, I have my juice as well as the lemon juice itself. Now, I decided to go with honey on this one. I try to keep my house as low sugar as possible, so using a honey was just a nice option for me to give the kids a jelly that they would enjoy while still being a little bit healthier in order to make me happy as a mom. So I'm adding this pectin to the honey itself. Now you want to add the pectin to the smaller amount of honey and get it well stirred. The reason is that this helps the gelling factor. And later when you taste it, if you want it to be a little bit sweeter over on the stove, you can go ahead and add more honey at that time after you have your pectin mixed into the sweetener of your choice. Also, when using a honey, you want to make sure that honey is room temperature. It helps it to be able to stir a little bit easier than, say, if you were using a cold honey or even one that's hot. Now is time to add your calcium water. You add 4 teaspoons of calcium water to 4 cups of juice. Since I am actually doing a double batch, I went ahead and added the 8 teaspoons here. Now, if you've seen any of my other content, you know that my tiny helper is always confident that she is better at stirring and is more interested in dumping things into the pans than I am myself. So she has to get her hands in the mix here to make sure everything is going just right. She's also very good at watching to make sure that I'm getting a good stir on this honey. So she's playing her role quite well in the kitchen today. Currently waiting on the juices to come up to a full boil, but while we do, I wanted to give you a little information on why I chose this recipe. I feel like a lot of new canners come to Canuary and they probably come away with a really long wish list. I know several of you are eyeing new canners, especially with them being given away in addition to the digital that I showed on my own last video. But what I wanted to show you here is that you can something, you can get a final product on your shelf without investing in a lot of equipment and without even putting some of your own homegrown produce on the line. With this being a store-bought juice, it takes all of the worry out of ruining something that you've worked so hard for. This is also really nice because it gives you the ability to practice with things like the flats, the lids, and the rings. And to make sure that you're familiar with how to use your canner, how to use your actual jar lifters, as well as how to make sure to get your seals nice and clean and to get everything properly on the shelf. Just doing something simple like this is a really great way to get started and make sure that you're aware of how everything goes. So when you do have something on the line that's expensive or that you worked really hard to put together yourself, you're not so worried about ruining the end product because you've got the basic steps down. Now, as you can see, we're starting to come up to that boil, but it's not quite a full rapid boil like I'm looking for yet. So we're gonna give it just a couple more minutes and then we'll come back and get started with the rest of the process. Okay, now we're gonna go ahead and add in the sweetener. I will say if you're using a sugar, this will go in a lot quicker, of course, but if you're using a honey, make sure to use some sort of scraper that is gonna effectively remove all of that honey and all of that pectin from your container. Here I had to go back with a different spatula and get everything scraped out of my jar just to make sure that I had the full ingredients in the pan. Once that's all in together, you want to vigorously stir to make sure everything gets dissolved for a couple of minutes and get it back to that boil. Once complete, remove that pan from your burner so you can go ahead and begin the process of filling your jars. The jars themselves are going to be in your canner with the water. So the way I do it is just to get the lid off and then to use my jar lifter to pull the jars out, dumping the water back into your pot itself. It's already the proper temperature and that will go ahead and be used to cover the rest of the jar. So this is one of those steps that I mentioned before. You can get good at practicing before you're doing something else. So that took me a minute to figure out how to dump that, how I wasn't going to get water on my hands and that kind of thing. It is super hot and it's steamy in that pot, so you want to make sure to be familiar with this process. I'm using a paper towel here to go ahead and just ensure that I'm not dripping juice or the jelly itself all over my stove. This doesn't always work super functionally for me, but it is a good way to ensure that you have a little bit of protection. Sometimes I'll also take my towel and put it over to the pan itself and have the pan sitting on the edge of the towel, which is actually a better choice. Just because at that point you have all the protection that you need to make sure nothing is going down on your counter or on your stove depending on your workspace. With the jelly filled, I'm going to go back and measure my headspace. They all need to be 1/4 inch. You can measure that several different ways, but I love this little plastic thing. It's made specifically for measuring. It has 1/4 inch stair steps all the way up. So I'm just topping those off to make sure that I get the proper adjustment on the headspace before going back with the other end and using it just to run around inside and make sure that there aren't any bubbles. Typically, when you're using a liquid product, that isn't going to be an issue, but it's a good habit just to form to constantly make sure that you're working through every single jar to continue to make sure that you don't have bubbles that'll impact the headspace going forward. The next step is particularly important when you're dealing with something sticky like this. Here, I'm going to take vinegar and wipe all of the rims individually several times just to make sure that there is nothing lingering that's going to impact the seal. Next, I'm going to grab my flats and line them up and get them on every single jar before going ahead and adding the rings themselves to secure and make sure everything is exactly where it needs to be and properly finger tight. Once complete, it's off into the water. Once the lid goes on, you're waiting for it to come up to a full boil before you can start your processing time. Now, at my house, that means it's go time for cleanup time. So I'm cranking up the heat and bringing it up to temperature. I'm to that full boil at this point, so for my elevation, it needs to start timing for 11 minutes before it is complete. When the time is up, go ahead and get the lid off and get those jars out of the water. You want to remove them as quickly as possible because you do not want to over-process with the Pomonas. And that's really it. It is not hard at all to make a jam or jelly using Pomonas to give yourself a low sugar or no sugar option on the shelf. So with that said, I'm going to let you watch me bring these out, and I just want to thank you for participating in Canuary, and I hope you guys, or wish you guys, all the best of luck when it comes to those prizes. Make sure to like, comment, and watch every single video all month long, and make sure you let Leisa over at Sutton's Days hear how much we appreciate her for all that she's done in collaboration with 4 Jars to put this together. This really is an amazing collaboration, and I am so grateful to be a part of it. If you've enjoyed what you've seen here, make sure to subscribe to my page down below. I have been overwhelmed with the awesome comments and the support from everybody who's been around for the first one, and I just want to thank you for taking the time out of your day to spend a little time with me. So from my house to yours, thank you for stopping by, and we'll see you back soon.